You can start.
Welcome everybody and thank you for attending.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome everybody and thank you for attending today's webinar. I'd like to thank Andy Hart, who's president of EMEA based in Ireland, Castlebar, for presenting this to us. I believe that this report is vital and key to the future of the way we're going to run our regions. Thank you, Andy. You can take over.
Thanks, Beth. Delighted to be presenting to you today. What I'm going to do is run through some slides and some general points on the 3+1 report, and then going to look at the actual report itself, and then I'm going to open it up for questions if we have time. And certainly available for questions and follow up with yourself, Beth, and Mike, and your team. Very happy to help. The 3+1 report is really designed to aid people in getting a consistent 3+1 strategy, so filling chapters, retaining chapters, and starting chapters. What it does is it very much helps you focus on where the results are coming from. It came out of a conversation with Ivan around the whole strategy of 3+1 and how we were, if you like, growing, but where we were growing from. So we did some analysis. We came up with the 3+1 report. 3+1 report is very simply colored. It's either red or green. It's either yes or no. So it's basically looking at the different things in 3+1 and showing how we can basically get better information to be able to help you grow your regions and have better analysis. So the 3+1 report is broken down in obviously the different categories. So launch, this first column tells you how much you've been growing in launch. So that's basically launching chapters, then you take away the suspended chapters and you take away closed chapters. So that's the overall net launch or growth through launch strategy. The next one is the net growth through filling chapters. Now, it's something we often see in regions, and it was certainly my experience in 2009 when we were recognized as the fastest growing region in the world. I noticed that we were growing very much through launch, but not necessarily growing through filling. In other words, our existing chapters were beginning to slip backwards, although our overall growth was totally up. So the filling chapters is really taking two things. It's about retaining members and also continuous inviting as well. So making sure that members are actually focused on bringing more visitors and converting them. So you can get a picture of how you're growing through the launch, suspended and closed chapters, and also filling. So those are existing chapters. So it excludes your launch numbers, so it gives you a much clearer indication of where your activity is coming from. The first year retention is there really to look at the whole issue of first year, making sure we're looking after people in the first year. People who stay more than 1 year, you normally stay about 2 to 3 years with us, if not longer. And then the overall retention is your overall activity. So it's not looking at first years, it's looking at everybody in total. So when you see those two columns, what you can really get a sense of is where the issue is. Is it with existing members, or is it with your first year members you're bringing in, they're staying for a while and then leaving before their time is up or before? And then you've got the net total. That's basically just the two fill and launch added together or taken away, and that will give you your net growth. And you've got some other columns there, your average chapter size, as well as your your total activity members, if you like. The NPS, the Net Promoter Score, is an essential guide, if you like, to the future of your chapters, and it gives you a good indication of what's going to happen to your chapters in the future. We'll be spending quite a lot of time on the NPS element because it is a new element, whereas the 3+1 is really just breaking down the information we've already had, but in a way that you understand where your growth is coming from. So the Net Promoter Score is really equal to the member experience. It gives you a good indication of where or how your members feel about what's happening in the chapter. And it is a very subjective kind of experience. So it's, you know, are they happy or are they sad? Are they getting what they want? Are they feeling that the chapter is leaving them behind? It's a great tool to look into the future of the chapter because it gives you some clear indications of whether or not people are going to renew or actually build the chapter. So I'll go through it in more depth. So the NPS comes from a survey we send out every 2 months to 1/6 of the membership. It has 3 basic questions. How likely are you to recommend BNI to your friends and colleagues? This is really about whether or not they feel confident about BNI. Would they happily, talk to their friends and colleagues about this? Obviously, this is very relevant to us because we grow through personal recommendation and making sure that people are happy with BNI actually makes them want to grow the chapters and bring more people to them. Second question is really overall, did the referrals you received meet your expectations? One of the things that we need to be very conscious of is that people's expectations of how much referrals they're going to receive really determines whether or not they're happy. It's interesting, we had a florist in a chapter of 45 who left after half a year because she had only received 25,000 euros worth of referrals in that period, and yet she had a greater expectation. She was expecting more just because someone had said to her very early on about the average value of the seat. And the problem is her expectation were overset, and therefore, to get 25,000 euros in the first year was a very good achievement. But the fact that she had only got 25 in a period of time that she was expecting more made her leave, and she didn't stay. So it's interesting how even the members talking to each other and setting expectations can cause issues further down the line. And this is an idea of just seeing, are the members receiving what they think they should be getting? Then there's another critical question, which is if you were due to renew today, would you renew? And if they don't say yes, then they're asked a subsequent question, which is giving them a list of things that they were asked to say, well, what would be the reason? And it's interesting to see those in context as to reasons why people are leaving. So let's look at the survey itself. So the first question, in other words, the NPS question, which is the critical question, is in the first email. So it's very much straightforward for the member to click, and that's on screen for a scale of 0 to 10. And the importance of the 0 to 10 is basically it shows how likely they are to recommend. And very much the idea is that if they choose between 1 and 6, these people are seen as detractors. In other words, they're not happy with the product or service that the company is offering. And NPS is used quite widely in industry to look at people and how happy they are with the service. The important thing is to say is all feedback is good. So it's not a personal score. It's not something that's indicating that you're doing something wrong. It's just how they feel about their experience in the chapter. And it's important not to skew this or go into the chapter and say, oh, you're giving a bad score, you need to give a 9 or 10. This is really important. It's just feedback. But the point is it's important feedback because you can benefit from using this feedback in many ways, and I'll show you how. So if they score between 0 and 6, it's very much saying they're unhappy. They're more likely to sort of give bad word of mouth than good word of mouth. If they're 7 or 8, it's seen as they're passive. They're okay with your products and services. They're happy enough, but they're not going to go out their way to promote you. Now, the critical ones are 9s and 10s. Those people who are very excited about the products and services you're actually giving. They're willing to talk to their friends. They, in fact, go out and talk to their friends. The BNI does a couple of very key things that these kinds of people do. Now, when we're looking at the overall score, it's basically your detractors, so here 14% on this example, and 50% promoters, in other words, those people who scored 9 and 10, and the two are just basically taken off, and the percentage is taken off. So here 50 minus 14 is 36. That's how you get the net score. So it's kind of saying your net word of mouth, your net publicity from your users or your customers is this score. So it's the negative plus the minus, plus the positive, and that gives you your net score. So when you see your scores, it's a kind of score that's saying what is the word of mouth being generated by that chapter. So this is what the report looks like, and it will give you each chapter in your given area and your number of respondents and the response rate. And I'll go into detail about those in a minute. Now, what it also gives you is the number of detractors, people who have scored you from 0 to 6, and then those number of passives and those number of promoters. And you can clearly see these are actual results from Mumbai, and what I'm going to do is going to bring up your reports later on. So just to give you a snapshot of what's happening in the regions, but also give you an idea of some of the things to look at, because I'm going to talk through the different things that I would look at, and then we can sort of look at some of the examples in the actual Net Promoter Score. This is general feedback, so it's good. It's really critical for you guys to get a sense of what this report can do for you. So this is the kind of report that you're seeing. Okay. So why is it important? Well, happy members stay longer. In other words, those people who score us 9 and 10 stay longer than those people who score us 0 to 6 detractors. It's more likely detractors will leave. And what we've done is been able to create an algorithm that uses this data, but also their PALMS data and other factors as well, which will create an algorithm which allows you to get a list every time one of these surveys is done, that you can actually ring members and see how it's going, because it's a bit like these people are more likely to leave. And it's very much using the information we have from the PALMS report and also the NPS scorings that they've given us. And it's saying basically people who score us low are more likely to leave. This is obvious based on the fact that, you know, unhappy people are not going to continue your products and services. But it gives us an insight into the kinds of people who are unhappy, but also it gives us the opportunity to use the algorithm to create a list where you can actually call those members, and it's obviously you're not going to call them and say, hey, you're on this list, I'm just ringing up to see why you're leaving. It's a way of basically engaging them and thinking about, you know, how can you help those people, and you know, that list will go out every couple of weeks after the actual survey's gone out. And so you've got an opportunity to create a call list, and it's a customer care call list that you would ring them and say, look, how's things going? Particularly what we found is ringing the members on those kinds of lists, it's usually things like they're not actually engaging with the system. Their one-to-ones are usually low. So a great question you can ask them is how your one-to-ones going. And usually they will tell you, oh, I'm not doing them, or well, I haven't got around to them, or I haven't got space and time. And so you can help them basically facilitate their membership a bit better. The other thing, interesting enough, is people who score us 9 and 10, in other words, promoters, will actually bring more people to the chapter. If they're happy, if they score us 9 and 10, they actually bring visitors to the chapter, whereas the people in the other categories, the detractors and the passives, tend to only bring people when they're forced into, or the chapter is doing a drive or something like that. Whereas promoters will actually bring people to the chapter, whereas the others may be inviting but not necessarily bringing. So it's hugely important for us to increase the number of promoters within the chapter, and also leverage that promotion in the chapter to be able to create better chapters for the members. Now, is there any insights why people would be scoring us or wouldn't be happy with BNI? Well, everybody comes to BNI with one intention, which is new business. I put referral in brackets there because obviously we work through referrals, but I think a new member joining a chapter, and certainly when I joined a chapter, I wasn't thinking about getting referrals. I was thinking about people helping me get new business. Now, there are a lot of other reasons why people stay, and people can stay a long time without getting business, but eventually the business aspect of it becomes critical. So it's if you like, it's a basic hygiene factor. If people aren't earning new business from the chapters, they will leave. And we really need to look at how we can help them. Obviously, it's the quality of their one-to-ones and it's the quality of their 60 seconds and things like that. But it's very much for us to look and see how we can help them. So overall, the referrals we're receiving, this is the global number. As you can see, 48% met their expectations, while 11% of people said it exceeded their expectations, which is great. But if you look at the amount of people who either didn't answer or it didn't meet, 35%, plus the 6% it didn't actually didn't answer the question, 41% is pretty much around the level of the average retention rate, which is interesting. So you're losing people who are happy enough with BNI, but personal circumstances change, and then you're losing a lot of people who were not meeting their expectations. Now, whether or not the chapter's oversetting those expectations or they have they've set them themselves, we need to look at how we can help those people meet their expectations or help them to understand what a reasonable expectation would be. So this is looking at the number of people, the promoters and detractors and passives who, when asked the question, would you renew, what is their likelihood of renewing? Notice here 91% of the promoters said, yes, I'd definitely renew if my renewal was today. But if you look at the detractors, 32%. And this is very much what we see. Detractors do not stay in the chapters, they leave. And this is one of the key things about the NPS score is that there is a direct correlation between being a detractor and more than likely leaving. Obviously, people do stay, but stay for other reasons other than that it's actually working for them. So there's personal reasons, nothing else. So this is the reasons that the options they're given to explain why they would leave. And as you can see, low number of referrals, quality of referrals, it involves too much time. These are kind of things that you would expect from people who are not getting business from the chapter. The fact that it's taking up too much time really says that the members are really not looking at it from the point of view of integrated marketing. They think it's too much effort for the return they're getting, and therefore it's too much time. The others are usually, when we look into them, it's usual personal circumstances of change of business or things like that. Whereas, if you like, the main reasons are very much around the lack of business. We did a test where we asked the members, what would you miss? So we get, again, sort of reverse that question. We put referrals, relationships with other members, opportunities to meet clients, peer support, personal development, training, other. And interesting enough, not many people are going to miss the referrals, which is interesting. It does show that they're not receiving a referral, so they're not going to miss them. And obviously, if you see here, the social aspect of BNI is what they're going to miss most, but it doesn't make them stay. So, we are really looking at the whole focus, if you like, of retention, not only as making them feel part of the group and looked after, but also that making sure that they're receiving business and they're getting business through the system as well. This was actually reflected in a survey in 2010 by the UK, and again, you can see similar kind of numbers, not enough business, poor quality members, very much relating to that kind of theme, which is really about not receiving enough business. One thing they did in the survey is they matched it then to the traffic lights, member traffic lights. And I'm not sure you're using member traffic lights in South Africa, but what's interesting is, again, they asked, would you renew? And they based it on the member traffic lights. They did an analysis here. And what they found was a lot of people said, just like in the gray, a lot of people said, yes, I would renew. And yeah, more than likely I would. And then basically the reality of that was exactly what we see in the NPS is basically that, a lot of people who are struggling with the system or not relating to the system, basically leaving it. So all the gray members left, then the red, 50% of the red, amber, and obviously 10%. When it was looked into this 10% in the green, it was very much personal or business reasons that they left. So people who are utilizing the system, who are engaged with the system, obviously stay longer, and that's quite obvious. But what's interesting is that people think they're going to stay, but they don't, because they're not really receiving basic referrals and things like that. One good exercise you can do to have a look at how your members are getting on is print out the summary PALMS report and see how many zeros. In other words, see how many zeros people haven't given. So if there's loads of people who have not given referrals, then more than likely somebody hasn't received referrals. There's a correlation between the two, and you can look at not the average, because average always pulls to the center, but what's the most frequent number in that series of numbers. Probably gives you an idea of how much your members are probably receiving on average. And then you can very much understand that there's a lot of members in the chapters who are not receiving a great deal of business, because there's a correlation between what's given and what's received. So, we could say, well, those members just don't get it. They don't understand the process. They don't go to training. They don't do these, these kind of things. And it's essential for us really to think about that and take responsibility. In a way, members' education is our responsibility. There's no, this is not trained, as Dr. Ivan Meissner says, is not trained in university,
Unmuted.
at school. Referral marketing, networking, and word-of-mouth marketing are, if you like, very underdeveloped topics within the business community. BNI is a mindset. BNI is my business. In other words, it's part of my marketing system. It's part of my integrated strategy. Learn more to earn more. The more people learn, the better they get at BNI. And also give us gain. It takes a little while for members to get there. But also presentation skills, understanding how to present their products and services, how to refer themselves and make themselves credible as well. And that effective marketing message, listen to a lot of members 60 seconds or 30 seconds, depending on what number you're using within the chapter, depending on the size. You will often hear members saying, I'm an architect, I do this, I do this, I do this, I do this, I do this. And a lot of them are just basically being very conservative about how they're educating each other and what they're doing in the chapter when it comes to communication. They're not really communicating how to refer them. They're just continuing to explain what they do as a business. Now, anybody who listens to 60 seconds will pretty much get what an architect does. But for them then to stand there and say, I do this and I do this, I do this and do this and I do this and I do, is pretty much what a lot of our members are doing. So it's important to get them to make sure that they have an effective message as well. And then really it's getting them to understand how to use the toolkit that we provide them, the tools like the one-to-one tools and things like that, and how to leverage those. And it's really important to make sure that the members know that things like one-to-ones aren't just a one-off kind of thing. They're a very important part of developing business, not only developing a relationship, but then leveraging that relationship in creating more business for each other. The issue really
Muted.
that members, and particularly first-year members, have a lot to learn. This you may have seen on a couple of webinars by HQ, it's called the Bob curve. So Bob is an imaginary, if you like, member, new first-year member, and it's really his journey. What's really interesting is we're doing a survey at the moment for people who are coming into the system, and then people are leaving the system. So in other words, new members come in, their NPS is very high. By the time they leave, it's usually in the negative, minus. So again, NPS is a good indication of kind of people's attitude as to how they're getting on in the system. But also, if you think of a member, we know the amount of information they need to really get through to begin to leverage the system. And we need to really make that easier and make it more in chunk bite size to be able to get to understand how they can leverage BNI to effectively market their business. Someone who's saying it takes too long hasn't really integrated it or have been able to educate other people to integrate it into their business such that it's an everyday thing. We know that it can work very effectively when members educate each other effectively about how to create referrals. One of the things we teach our members is the confidence curve, obviously, and the minimum level of trust that it takes for someone to refer them. I think one of the things we don't really explain to the member is that you have to have a confidence curve with everybody. Everybody has to have a checklist. So if you think about it, everybody has a very different sense of what somebody has to be, to if you like, be credible, to be, referable. If you wrote down a list of things that you thought, just a very quick list of 3 or 4 things that you thought someone had to be before you would refer them, and you compared that with somebody else's list, you'd find that actually your list and their list would be completely different. What's really interesting is if you ask a chapter, and this is a great educational exercise, is you ask them to write down 5 things that someone has to be to be referable. Okay, so they need to be well dressed, well spoken. You know, they need to turn up on time. They need to do what they say. Everybody writing down their own list, and then ask the chapter to very quickly network and compare that list. What's interesting is you find that the chapter suddenly starts to realize that their list is not the same as other people's lists. And it gives them an insight into the fact that, you know, it's not about just going up this confidence curve, but it's very much understanding what I need to be to somebody else in order to refer me. And this came from my own member experience of understanding the differences between different business people and their thoughts about what I needed to do to be referable compared with what I had on my list. And it's a very good exercise within a chapter just to explain that element, to say, look, everybody's list is very different. You check your fellow members' list because it's important. We had a membership committee issue where a business coach was not getting referrals from their chapter, and through various things, it became an issue within the chapter. And I sat down with the membership committee and sort of went through it with them. And they said, well, you know, they had members who were saying she's just not referable. And when I asked those members why she wasn't referable, they said, well, you know, she drives a really beat up old car. And I said, well, how's that relevant to her getting business? And they said, well, look, I'm sending her to my best client and she is supposed to be someone who's selling success, then she should really, you know, look the part. And their justification was, you know, I can't refer this person. And it's interesting how that becomes relevant to members, where we sort of send them into a chapter and say, look, you do this, this, and this, you'll be fine. But we forget about this element about, you know, making sure they're referable, and not only to what we think is referral, but for them as well. So when you're looking at members making more money, you've got to start thinking about these tiny little things that members miss and can be making a significant difference, especially with first-year members, where they're only just getting to know people and they really need to understand what they need to do to be credible within the chapter. Another thing is the relationships, level of relationships, and this is something we don't necessarily teach, is that there are different levels of relationship. So, you know, you can have a negative relationship with someone in the chapter and you're never going to potentially refer them because, you know, even if the potential client or friend would benefit from their product and services. Then there's just knowing somebody in the chapter. And this is particularly relevant in big chapters as well. But they would, you know, it would probably okay to refer a florist to someone, even though I didn't know the florist very well, because there's very little risk. The important thing, though, is trying to get the members to realize the importance of how, you know, the referral process works. They have to get into a positive relationship. In other words, I know, like, and trust them, and again, I'll promote them when the opportunity arises. I'm not going to go out my way, but I do like them enough to refer them when I walk into an opportunity or an opportunity walks into me. Business relationship really is more about being really confident in their ability, spending a lot of time with them, doing a lot of one-to-ones with them, understanding what they're looking for, and I'm going to go out of my way to, you know, raise the opportunity and talk to people when I get the chance. Now, a committed business relationship is really what members should be looking for. And this is where I'm very confident to refer them and also make considerable opportunities. In other words, I changed the way that I do business to include them in the referral, in my everyday. For using the architect again, it's about, you know, when you're talking to a client, it would be things like, would you have a surveyor already lined up? Have you got a builder already lined up? These kinds of questions can allow them to introduce their fellow members' businesses very easily. And it's really getting to that level of relationship where someone is willing to change their work practices in order to actually generate business for each other. When you do that, then the amount of business that flows through a chapter is amazing. The difference really is that, you know, in BNI terms, a positive relationship is an advocate. They will advocate your business. A business relationship is, as I said, a promoter. They will promote your business at every opportunity. And a committed business relationship they will create business for your members in a chapter. Now, what I'm drawing your attention to is where are members in that relationship? One of the exercises you can do with them is basically have them write down the names of their fellow members, and then also have them look at their contact spheres, and then look at their relationships. And then this is a good way to stimulate one-to-ones, because people suddenly realize I don't have sufficient relationships or enough understanding of people's businesses to be able to generate business. We need to basically help members very much focus on their relationships with their members, because they assume I'm in a chapter, I'm saying a good 60 seconds, I'm doing good presentation, I'm very credible, and yet I'm not receiving the business I think I should. This is where expectations get slightly managed, because you start to say, well, look, you don't have the relationships you need with these people, so you need to work on those relationships more. It's a good exercise to do in a chapter. You need a sort of template like this, and I can always supply Beth and Mike a copy of the template if they're interested. And it gives you an opportunity. Now, the names are not filled in. And when you do this is to make sure that people who are writing names down, if they can't do it from memory, then you can challenge them as to whether or not they have a relationship with someone, especially in big chapters. Very obvious when you do it in a big chapter that they probably know about 12 to 15 people, and yet there are 45, 50 people in the chapter. And it gives you a great opportunity to have more conversations with them about doing more one-to-ones and improving them, especially where you've got relationships in a power team and stuff like that, where they haven't quite got to the point where they need to. It's a good exercise. You need them to get move away from each other often in a chapter, and often tell them to basically mark the person they're sitting next to as a committed business relationship. It just helps them. So it's a bit of fun, but it actually is a good learning tool as well. So when we're looking at the NPS, we're looking at feedback. We're not looking at a score on us personally. That's really, am I happy? Am I getting the business that I want? Am I willing to refer BNI? Am I willing to bring my friends and contacts to BNI? It's a very good tool for that, and very much helps us begin to look into the future. Okay, when I'm looking at the report, I'm looking for a number of things. Low response rate, because a chapter that gives me a low response rate, in other words, no one bothers to fill out the survey, is suffering from one or two things. Either it's going into everybody's spam, which is unlikely given that we don't have low response rates in other people's, or they can't be bothered to give me any response. In other words, they don't really care to even fill in a survey. It's very easy to fill in the survey. It's only 3 questions. So that would be concerning to me. And I'll talk about a little bit more about what we do then. High numbers of individual detractors in a chapter. Then I'm looking for negative chapter NPS. So the total score is negative. High percentage of detractors in a first-year chapter. That's really important because it tells you how, what's going to happen at first-year renewal. Lots of passives, which is a great opportunity. High number of individual promoters in the chapter, and high chapter NPS. Okay, so they're good takeaways and bad takeaways, or things that you can do to make a huge difference to your region. Low response rate could be either they don't really care to fill in the response, which is an indication that they don't care enough to give you feedback, which says you really should spend more time with the chapter. Also, you could go in and just say, look, BNI is really interested in your feedback. It comes from head office. Please fill it in. It's anonymous. It would love to have your feedback. It always helps us, especially in low response rates. Low response rates, anything under 20%, and the new report now has it color-coded, so it's very easy to see, and I'll show you. Individual detractors in a chapter, this is where I would be slightly concerned. It's where you have large numbers of people. So in this region, Superstars has 5 detractors in that chapter. Would indicate to me that there is a potential problem there, and that it could be, there's a large chapter, it could be people, new members not feeling part of the chapter, it could be a mentoring issue, it could be an integration issue. We had a large chapter who had this situation when we explored it. It was actually the new members felt that the older members were in a clique and they weren't really being looked after. This is a way of helping you indicate where there are issues within the region. One-to-ones is a great way of solving that, and in fact encouraging more one-to-ones with members is critical really. developing the relationship and integrating the relationship as well. Education is really important as well. The more education you can get your chapters to engage in, the more they receive business. It is a matter of upskilling your members, and the more you can get them to be integrated, but also understand how to leverage the system, it makes a significant difference to their businesses. Chapters that participate as a group in regional trainings can actually, there's some work done to be shown that if they attend 4 workshops in a year as a group, they actually double the amount of business that they're receiving. And this is partly because they have a common understanding, but also the teamwork that they are involved in, and that they see this as a massive benefit. So if you can encourage chapters to be educated together, it's a great benefit to them and to you. So low chapter scores. Okay, so in the NPS scores, you'll see that the final score will be, okay, 17 here, minus 13, 15, 15, and 19. These are low scores. And on the new report, they're actually color highlighted. So if all things are being equal, low NPS scores are unlikely to grow. So chapters with low scores are not willing to grow simply because there's not enough people in there who are willing to bring people or can bring people. Then also small chapters with negative scores close. It's a good indication of where your chapters are going. If they're beginning to get small and they've got a low NPS score, it's a good indication that you're going to have a problem down the line. And also, anything with a negative 30 or below is it's in the danger zone and should really be looked at sort of having some sort of intervention or help on an ongoing basis until you see that NPS come back up. Because basically, if you think about this, if your members are not willing to bring visitors, which low NPS score tells you, you're not going to grow it. You've got members who are naturally turning through the system because they're unhappy. That chapter is really headed one way. And so you can get ahead of that curve by looking at the score on a 2-monthly basis and saying, okay, I've got a chapter that's got low NPS. I need to put some more energy in, maybe go and visit it, see how things are going, maybe put more energy into looking after it. It could be a stage of team development, and these are just the basic stages of team development that any chapter goes through. In fact, any team goes through. So in the initial stages, they come together, they're very responsive in the forming stage. So a new chapter will very much take on what the director says. As you see, the morale is very high, productivity is low, but over time, the storming phase is possibly where a issue could arise, membership issues could reside. You'll see this from a team dynamics point of view in the chapter. And really, in essence, you need to get in there and resolve those issues. So a low NPS score could be indicative of an issue of a membership committee, or it could be a leadership issue, or it could be a general dissatisfaction with something that's happening in the chapter, or educational level. So when you're looking at these reports, it's really giving you an indication, here's a problem. You need to look at how you look into that and how you resolve it as well. So it may be just a membership issue that you can resolve, but needs to be resolved fairly quickly. Helping chapters with low NPS score, you need to really put energy back into them. You need to effectively make them fall back in love with BNI. They joined up for one thing, they wanted business, so you need to get them to sort of refocus on the basics, get them engaged in one-to-ones, get them engaged in 60 seconds education. You sometimes have to break the rules a little to give them some special treatment to help them during that period, but it is worth turning around. When we were experimenting with this very early on, we found that if you were able to go in and sort of give the chapter much more focus and more attention and maybe lavish a little more than normal, if you like, you could actually save a chapter and prevent it from closing. Where you didn't do an intervention or a kind of workshops or something, some sort of direct intervention in the chapter and helping them turn around and really focus them, they lived along for a little while, but then they died. And it is a really good tool to predict where you've got issues in the future, to look at how you can help chapters and which chapters you need to put. It also gives you the reverse as well. It shows you how to grow chapters as well. We're talking about this a bit later. So high percentage of directors in a high NPS chapter. This happens probably mostly in large chapters. So you've got a lot of detractors in a chapter, and it's effectively the golden core. A lot of people love BNI, and you've got loads of promoters, but you've got people in the white. In other words, they're probably the newer members or people who feel that they're not being part of the golden core of the chapter. And it's something to look out for in large chapters, and particularly getting them to do socials and one-to-ones and things like that can really help mix that up. You're really looking to get scrambled egg, if nothing else. So high detractors in first-year chapters. On the NPS score report, you'll see now that the first-year chapters are highlighted in blue. And really what this tells you is if you've got a lot of detractors in a first-year chapter, so say here Superstars is actually a first-year chapter, those 5 people are more than likely to leave, and it's probably more indicative of a large number of people who are going to be taken with it. What's interesting at first-year renewal is there's a very much a sort of complacency to say, oh, everybody's going to renew. We had this ourselves in a chapter, had 36 members, and it had an NPS of 17. And I spoke to the area director who was looking after that and said, no, everybody's going to renew. Everybody's absolutely said that. I've spoken to everybody themselves, absolutely 100% on board with renewing. I said, look, you've got a problem here. You've got a lot of detractors in there. And he said, no, no, absolutely everybody's going to renew. By the end of it, we ended up with a chapter of 22. So the NPS kind of predicted exactly what was going to happen. So although people will say something to you when they're filling out a survey, and an anonymous survey that this is, they're much more open and honest about their feedback. And it gives you a good indication, do I have a problem in a chapter? And do I need to spend more time in that first year chapter? Lots of passives in a chapter are good as well. It gives you a great opportunity to know, look, if I spend a little bit more time in that chapter, a little bit more love, a little more focus, I can get people over the line. I can get them to be excited about BNI, and that's what you really want to do. Passion grows this business. Very much the members' passion for this business is hugely important. So you can see in the column here, it tells you how many passives there are. So in Impeccable, there are a lot of passives there, 10 passives. So that would be a chapter I would spend time in making sure I'm having one-to-ones with it. All your directors' teams are having one-to-ones with members and making sure that they're being looked after and happy. It just doesn't take much to help them become more engaged with the process. So chapters with high NPS, these are great because you know where to put energy into growing. So these chapters have a lot of people who are happy with BNI. So it means that if you put energy into those chapters with the right kind of focus on bringing people, they'll be able to bring the right people to grow that chapter. And if they're large chapters, it's a great opportunity for you to focus on the power teams and stuff like that. So you need to just watch for a low response rate and a high score, as I've highlighted here, with energy. You don't want anything under 20 is a low response rate. So although there are a lot of happy people responded, I'd be a little wary of that kind of score. So just to bring that to your attention. Then a high number of individual promoters in a chapter. It's a great place to go to recruit. So when you're looking at recruiting, I think it's probably one of the biggest things that we, as executive directors, you think, okay, which chapter do I go to? I go to every single one. Well, the NPS score kind of gives you a better idea of where, if you like, the people who are more likely to respond to your message are. So, here you can see the large numbers of positive people who really enjoying BNI is a much more fertile ground to go, if you like, fishing. Why I use the word fishing is, as a kid, my brother and dad were into fishing, and I went along with it as well. And they once took me to a pond that had never been fished. Now, if you know anything about fishing, finding a pond that's never been fished is pretty rare. And I weighted up my hook, and I put my float on, and without any bait on it, I put it into the water, and a fish took it. It didn't understand what a hook was, and it actually took the hook without any bait on it because it was just shiny. So in a way, if you're going fishing for DCs, you might as well go where the fish are. So here, it very much gives you an indication of how you can find, if you like, fertile ground to go to look. What I'm going to do now is actually just bring up your the 3+1 report, and then I'm going to just run through it in real time. So there's an information sheet and a country sheet. So it shows you all the country results. Now here, what it says is basically South Africa has been growing through launch, and then the issue is through filling, and then it's a retention issue, and also a long-term retention. So the NPS is really good. Members are really happy, but there is a couple of things that we need to look at. Now, when you look at your regions, you get a better, clearer idea of where your growth is coming from. So when a region is in red, it says that it hasn't grown through launch, or it's going through fill. So you can see here, you've got better indication of where you have to put energy with your chapters and some of the key areas that you need to focus on. Then your first year retention rates. So it gives you an idea of how you're doing with your first year members. And there are definitely programs that we can get you and get some more webinars for you on first year retention and retention overall that will help you as well. We're doing a couple of recordings of seminars on retention, and this is an area we're keen to obviously help you with, because here you can see that retention itself is an issue. And then overall your NPS is very good. Now what you can do is, when you drill down further down, is you can then look at your results on an individual chapter level. And as I said, these are only feedback, and you shouldn't go into a chapter and say, give me a 10 and give me a 9, because that's what I want and that's what will make me look good, because you lose the ability to begin to see how people feel. So if you tweak these results by saying, oh, I need to get a better NPS score, you're getting a good NPS score now, and you're better to leave it as it is. In other words, just focus on them responding. So chapters here that are not responding, anything under not 20 is highlighted, and 20 and below is highlighted in red. Is just go into the chapter and ask them to respond to the survey. It may be ending up in their spam, it may be ending up in their clutter, but it'd be really good if they can give us the feedback, because it's essential for us to help them more. That's about all you need to do. So when you're looking at this report, you're looking for first year chapters. So Rainbow chapter, okay, is obviously a fairly new one. South Point chapter looks good. That's excellent, because a lot of happy people, one or two maybe still on the fence, and you've got one. You just need to keep an eye on that, because it's a first year chapter. You want to make sure that that continues. Maybe put more energy into that as well, to make sure you get them educated, because in the initial stages, depending on how old that chapter is, they're very enthusiastic, but as time goes on, that enthusiasm goes down as productivity goes up, and you need to just make sure that that's continuing. So BizMasters, that would be concerning, depending on the size of the chapter, and it would be a chapter I would tend to spend more time in to make sure I'm helping them and focusing on them. There are other chapters here that I would start looking at from the point of view of, maybe getting more help DCs wise and stuff like that. First base here, brilliant chapter to start recruiting from. It gives me great opportunity to look at this. So it's really feedback for you to be able to focus on and think about how you can get better feedback and more insight into what's happening. So here, this chapter is a chapter I would, BNI Shares, it was certainly a chapter I would be looking to, if you like, grow and motivate to move forward and stuff like that. And you could probably draw a few DC. Your NPS score is really good. And it's just a matter of picking out some of these chapters that have low scores and really finding out what the issues are, and very much helping them to, if you like, leverage the system, improve their relationships with each other, and also help them with education and understanding the overall benefits that they can receive from that point of view. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back and now take some questions, because I'm sure people have questions.
Unmuted.
So Beth, I hope that was helpful.
Andy, thank you very much. I think so. Let's see if anyone's got questions and responses.
Yeah, okay. So you should be able to, on your screens, put up your hand, and what I'm going to do is open your mic so you can ask me the question directly. So if you find on your panel, you should have a little raise hand sign, and I will open the mic up for you. Any questions?
Is there nothing?
Not yet, anyway. Any thoughts? Look, it's a new report and it's very much getting your head around it. I understand that. And it is actually very sensitive in the way that it can improve your retention of members and also your retention of chapters as well. It's a very predictive tool and it helps very much focus on the future because members' attitudes very much dictate the if you like the member experience in the chapter, and it really does give you an insight into how well they're feeling about the experience that they're receiving, but also then it gives you an idea of how to interact with them and if you like help them more, because it gives you an idea of how you can if you like which chapters to interact with. One of the things that as your region grows is which chapters to focus on. And this very much gives you that opportunity to focus on the right chapters in the right way. So those with low NPS score, you can look at sort of much more of a kind of intervention for helping them re-engage with the system, engage with education, and very much sort of get them focused on, improving their results. Those that are really enjoying it, those that are really want to move forward, interested in actually bringing people to the chapter because they're really enjoying it, you can see that too, and therefore you can actually really get those chapters to move forward as well. So it gives you a great indication in that way. Okay, well, Claudia, thank you very much for your comment. She said great webinar, thanks very much, great information. Well, Beth, since no one seems to have any comments at the moment, happy to take any. So Butch has his hand up. Okay, let me just unmute you, Butch. Yeah, hi, Butch.
Hi, Andy. Thanks for the webinar. It was excellent information. I just want to find out, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you well, thanks.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to find out to access the report or the questionnaire. Yeah. How do I get it out? For example,
okay, so
Rainbow.
Yeah, each time the 3+1 traffic lights come out every month, and they're available to Mike and Beth, so they can send those out. And the survey results are attached to the NPS score. Sorry, the 3+1 traffic lights every time. So every 2 months, the information comes out, is re-updated on the 3+1 traffic lights. So all of that is one report, which will come to you from now on. So the national directors now get it, and they can send it straight to you, and you've got all of that available information. So it's all there. There's another report we're currently producing, as I said, is a churn report. We basically will probably come up with a better name than that. It basically uses a complicated algorithm to identify members who are likely to leave you based upon their response to the survey, but also based upon their palmed activity and their behavior within in the chapters. So it takes their weekly activity and looks at it and says, how likely are you going to leave? And then it adds in that if they respond to the survey, it says, okay, what was your score? And it's not always that a detractor will leave. There are other factors within the algorithm that look at their performance. And it'll give you a list of people that are in danger of leaving because they're unhappy or their activity is low or something like that. So you'll be able to take that and use it as like a call sheet. So you'll be able to ring them and say, look, we're just doing some customer call, member calls, just want to check in with you, how's things going? And in that way, you'll be able to talk to them and see how their membership's going. So not only just the report will give you an indication on where you've got issues with retention, but also then this churn report will actually give you specific names of people we believe that you should probably talk to because they're likely to leave based upon their activity.
Okay, great. So the NPS is driven by the national office.
Yeah, so all of that information will come through. Beth will be able to distribute and stuff like that. So we distribute to them from now on, and they will be able to pass that information straight on to you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Great stuff. Thanks so much.
And
any other questions? Yes, Beth.
Okay. to let you know, the reports have been sent out the last couple of months, just to keep an eye open for them again when they come through. The other thing is I am recording this webinar, so if anyone would like a refresher to go over things again, let me know and I'll send it to you. Thanks. And Andy, thank you very much for your time. I think it was very worthwhile and important to the future of our regions. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. Look, happy to help, happy to answer any questions. So if anybody does think of something that they would like answer to, just send it to Beth and we can get together and I'll send back an answer and stuff like that. I'll send you. Wonderful. Thank you very much for inviting me. Really appreciate it. I look forward to doing other webinars for you or coming to see you very soon.
Great. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. Okay. Bye.